What is up? And welcome back to Beyond the Arc with Brandon Silvers. As always, I am your host, Brandon Silvers, talking WNBA Playoffs today. Hope you have been well. Don't forget to subscribe to my weekly Sports Watch Guide, where I tell you what's going on and hit you with little nuggets of info and trivia as well. All right, let's get into it. This has been a hell of a WNBA season, and I'm expecting more of the same from the postseason. If you've been here long enough, you know postseasons mean playoff power rankings. We got to talk about who has the best chance to win the title and why. And with that, I like to use a proprietary blend of analysis that looks at how teams have been playing heading into the playoffs, who is or isn't healthy, matchups, etc., while also throwing logic out the window when the situation calls for it. For example, if a team is ranked number 1, that doesn't necessarily mean that their opponent will be ranked 8th. This is based on chances to win the title, so I also factor in what a team might do if they pull off an upset and move on to the next round. We're going from worst to first, so without further ado, it's time to talk about number 8, the 8th seeded Atlanta Dream. The race for that final playoff spot came down to the final day of the regular season. The Dream beat out a Sky team whose 3 best players all went down with injuries down the home stretch, and a Mystics team that had to crawl out of an 0-12 hole they dug themselves to start the season. This was not a good season for the Dream, plain and simple. They went 15-25 after winning 19 games last season and adding Tina Charles and Jordan Canada in the offseason. Canada missed the start of the season with an injury, and Ryan Howard missed time too. But come on. Their main issue is on offense. A couple of weeks ago, I tweeted that the Dream seemed to score in spite of their offense. I just named you all these players. They also have Alicia Gray, yet they are last in the league in scoring. How is that possible? When you're talking about half-court offense, the goal is to get your best scorers the ball where they like to score from. Whoever is defending them should already be at a disadvantage when they catch the ball as a result of the action you've run. At worst, they should be no more than 3 dribbles away from a quality shot attempt. Whether it's the system itself or the way it's executed, the Dream offense doesn't operate like this at all. It doesn't get their scorers the ball where they like to score from. Instead, it merely works to get their scorers the ball, and they have to try to create something from nothing. Now, every player I've mentioned for them can create something from nothing, but asking them to do that for the majority of the game is ridiculous, and you're going to end up with a team that is dead last in shooting percentage. It's very similar to how NBA offenses operated in the early 2000s. Work to get your best scorer isolated on the wing, then let them spin the shot clock trying to make something happen. Good luck, Jerry Stackhouse. To add to this problem, they are also near the bottom of the league in pace and fast break points too, so they just aren't getting any easy buckets at all. This is a talented team, but not a good team. And to make matters worse, they faced the 1 seed New York Liberty in the first round. They beat the Liberty to end the season when their playoff lives were on the line, and the Liberty were playing not to get hurt, but that was their only win in 4 tries against New York. It'll be an upset if the Dream manage to steal a single game in this one. I'm more interested in what they end up doing this offseason because there are several directions they could go in, but the 8 seed remains number 8 in my power rankings. Going chalk again as my number 7 team heading into the postseason is the Phoenix Mercury. They secured the 7th seed by going 19-21 in the regular season, their first year under noted girl dad Nate Tibbetts. They've got a first-round matchup with the Minnesota Lynx. Equal amounts talent and problems here. Let's talk about it. On paper, this team is stacked. If you just looked at the roster, you would be shocked to find out that they hovered around 500 for the entire year. Now, some of that is injury related. Brittany Griner missed the beginning of the year with an injury. Then Beck Allen, who was a huge piece for them, also got hurt prepping for the Olympics. She's not going to be back. And now Kalia Copper has been struggling with a back injury that's caused her to miss time at the end of the regular season. She did play in the final regular season game, but back injuries are finicky. So is she going to be 100% all playoffs? That's the biggest red flag of all and a huge reason why I have them ranked so low. Ka's game took a step forward this year. When you get teams with this much talent, it can sometimes take a bit to figure out who the number 1 option is going to be. Well, from the jump, it's been Kalia. She's gone from all-star to a fringe MVP candidate level player. They need her to be healthy. But even when the majority of their pieces are healthy, they still have some glaring holes that make it hard for me to see them going far. For all of the offensive firepower they have, this is not a good offensive team. They're average by most metrics. Defensively, they typically fall somewhere between below average to bad. A couple of things are at play here. They have to play Sophie Cunningham for her shooting, especially with Beck out. Unfortunately, the only person Sophie defends is Donald Trump. Then you've got Diana Taurasi. She's 42 years old. I'm pretty sure asking someone that old to defend anybody is a crime in some states. So their perimeter defense almost always has at least one hole in it. You still have a deterrent in the paint in Brittany Griner, but this is an absolutely awful rebounding team. They are dead last in defensive rebounding percentage and offensive rebounds allowed, so they aren't finishing possessions when they do force a miss. Instead, they're giving up a league-worst 12.8 second chance points per game. Someone correct me if I'm wrong, but I can't think of a single team, men or women's, college or pro, that has won a championship as a below-average defensive team that has struggled to rebound. These are two things that every coach from middle school on harps on. Then, on top of all that, they have struggled against the Lynx all season long. Even throwing out a 24-point blowout without Griner, they're still just 1-2, with their one win being by a single point and their other two losses being by double digits. Sadly for Mercury fans, you've got a team that just wasn't able to put it all together for one last ride off into the sunset for DT. They check all of the boxes you don't want to check heading into the postseason, and because of that, they are my second worst playoff team. Moving on to number 6. Finally, a bit of a shakeup here as we find the 5th-seeded Seattle Storm. The Storm went 25-15 this year and will face the Aces in the first round. Similar to the Mercury, a lot of talent on paper, so why are they 6th? First of all, they did a fantastic job retooling after a down year last season. They brought in Nneka Ogwumike and Skylar Diggins-Smith, who have not slowed down at all. Remember, Skylar missed all of last season on maternity leave and has come back looking pretty much like the same player. And Nneka, who's in her 13th season overall, first not on the Sparks, and her season averages were right in line with her career ones at around 17 points and 7.5 boards a game. In addition to them, second-year player Jordan Horston has been a fantastic role player. Ezzy Magbagor has been a Defensive Player of the Year candidate. They even brought in Gabby Williams, who almost led France to an upset of the United States in the Olympic gold medal game. She's fit in very well. Now, as well as Gabby has fit in, this is a team that's been hovering around the 500 mark since the return from the Olympic break. I will say they do seem to have figured something out as of late that did give me pause when I was doing this, but a couple of injuries gave me pause on giving pause, so here we are. Ezzy suffered a concussion in their September 13th game against the Wings and hasn't played since. Whether that's out of an abundance of caution or because she's still suffering from the effects, I don't know. But I do know that, despite what Tua would have you believe, concussion symptoms can hang around way past the time when you're medically cleared. If she's not 100%, it's going to be hard for them to win because of what she means to them on both ends of the court, but specifically on defense. There's not a single playoff team without an elite post player. Mercedes Russell has been a starter before, and I like her game, but she is a downgrade from Ezzy, and that's no knock on her because a lot of players would be. As if that wasn't enough, Jewel Lloyd has also missed time recently with a knee injury. Jewel was already a red flag for me. She just hasn't looked like herself all season. Now, she's a volume shooter and scorer, so sometimes you have to live with games where the field goal percentage doesn't look great. She's just over 40% from the field in her career. This season, she's eclipsed that 40% mark in just 13 of her 37 games. She could and should be their best scoring option, and even if healthy, it's hard for me to believe in the Storm with the way she struggled with her shot this season. That's even more glaring from deep, where she's down to just 27% from about 35% in her career. If she's not hitting threes, then nobody really is for Seattle, and that's just not sustainable in the playoffs. You become too easy to guard. They are dead last in three-point shooting percentage. In fact, they're the only team who hits them less than 30% of the time. On top of that, they are just 1-3 against the Aces this season, including losing their last 3 matchups. I'd have them ranked higher against another opponent, but this is going to be a tough draw for them. Now, even without Ezzy, they do defend well enough that they're going to have a chance, but you have to score to win the game, and I don't think they're going to be able to do so consistently enough to make any real noise this postseason. If Seattle moved down, that means someone else moved up. Number 5 in my power rankings are the Indiana Fever. They went 20-20 to secure the 6th seed, where they'll face off against Connecticut. Not bad for a team that started 1-8. They've been one of the hottest teams in the league post-Olympic break. How'd they turn things around? After trying to figure out how all the pieces fit around Caitlin Clark, Christy Sides finally went all in on Caitlin as the primary ball handler. Turnover issues aside, her greatest strength is her playmaking ability. It also fuels the rest of her game. It's a nice thought to be like, okay, I'll stick Caitlin off the ball, run her off some screens to get her a look, but they don't really have another playmaker who is able to get her the ball where she's best at scoring, and she's a lot more comfortable shooting off the dribble since she's been doing that for at least 4 years that we know about, probably her whole life. She's the best at figuring out how to get the ball to everyone, herself included, where they like to score. It just makes sense to give her the ball and let her do that. This makes everyone else better. Kelsey Mitchell has been a certified bucket forever. For her career, the majority of her bucket getting has been the result of her going one-on-one and taking the defender off the dribble and making something happen. It worked, but it wasn't always efficient. Now it is, because she's getting the ball in scoring position versus having to create a scoring opportunity like we talked about with the Dream. She's averaging nearly 20 points per game, a career high, on a career high 47% shooting from the field. How is she doing that? Well, a career high percentage of her field goal attempts are coming from within 3 feet of the basket. My guess is that a lot of those are coming off fast breaks from those kick-ahead passes that Caitlin loves to throw. I think that's a pretty good guess, too, when we look at the percentage of her two-pointers that have been assisted. Surprise, surprise, another career high, as 68% of her twos have come off an assist. Her previous career high, 42%. That is a huge leap. Just for good measure, she's also had a career high of her threes assisted, although that leap isn't quite as extreme. Everyone was feeling this switch out in July, but when they got back from the Olympic break after some rest and some practice time, it was on. Kelsey has averaged 25 a game since then on about 50% from the field and 45% from three. The Fever turnaround also coincided with Lexi Hull carving out a spot in the rotation. In 15 games before July, she played 20 minutes in a game just twice. She had 7 games under 10 minutes. Since July, she hasn't played fewer than 19 minutes in a game. They have her guard outside of her position a lot to mix results, but she is their best perimeter defender. She creates a ton of extra possessions by forcing turnovers or getting offensive rebounds, and she's been absolutely lights out from three this season. In her previous 2 seasons in the league, she had never hit more than 22% of her threes in a season, and here she is at about 48%. She was unreal in August, hitting 71% of her 24 attempts, and she's only cooled off slightly. Clark and Mitchell are the most explosive scoring backcourt in the W. You add in Hull knocking down wide open threes and hustling, and oh yeah, Aaliyah Boston in the middle putting up 14, 9, and 3 assists. Being more intentional about getting her involved on offense also coincided with their turnaround. She's too good of a player to have as many single-digit shot attempt games as she had in the first half of the season, and again, as we've seen with many former Gamecock post players, she's also a great playmaker for her position. So with all of these wonderful things that I have to say about this team offensively, why not rank them higher? Well, they are absolutely terrible on defense. Boston is good, but not good enough to erase everyone else's mistakes and not an elite shot blocker. Hull's good, but finds herself in certain matchups where she's there because she's the best option, but it's really a mismatch. Clark just doesn't defend well. She's improved some over the course of the season, but physically she's not strong enough. Her lateral quickness isn't there either, and her effort is hit or miss. There are too many good guards in the league who can take advantage of that. Plus, the elite teams use this to slow down her offense. Her worst offensive splits this year have come against the Liberty and the Aces, both great teams, obviously, but also both teams who are like, we can save ourselves some trouble if we make her work extra hard defending. And they have the personnel to pull that off. She's not the only one who struggles on that end. Nalissa Smith is just out there most of the time. Effort and positioning have left the building. I'm curious to see if we see more Fagbenle and Dantas minutes in the playoffs. Nalissa is by far the best scorer of those 3, but she doesn't score enough to make up for that. Number 4, a bit of a surprise to some of you, I'm sure, is the Fever's first-round opponent, the Connecticut Sun. Another great season for them as they finished 28-12 to claim the 3 seed. A lot to like about them. They allow the fewest points per game in the W, thanks in large part to Alyssa Thomas and Dejanay Carrington. Thomas once again should finish in the top 5 in MVP voting. Carrington is in the running for most improved after an incredible season. This was her first as a full-time starter, and she put up career highs across the board. Ty Harris should also get some most improved love in her first year as a full-time starter too. And of course, DeWanna Bonner is still here getting buckets. And Brianna Jones came back from a ruptured Achilles and didn't miss a beat. They also made a big move trading for Marina Mabry partway through the season. Harris was the only real three-point threat for this team. Mabry helps out a lot there. She went from being the number 1 option in Chicago to a role that I think makes a lot more sense for her here, coming off the bench. And she's added another dynamic to them offensively, which they badly needed. What's crazy is her numbers off the bench are way better than her numbers as a starter, even though she's playing fewer minutes off the bench. She's putting up 16 points per game, shooting 49% from the field and 44% from 3 as a reserve. As a starter, those shooting percentages were just 38% from the field and 35% from 3. To beat this team, you're going to have to battle. They're tough as shit. They make games ugly. They take away things you like to do offensively. Their games are rock fights. They're experienced and battle-tested, so why aren't they ranked higher? Their best player is Alyssa Thomas. As great as she is, she's got 2 bad shoulders and she can't shoot. This limits her offensively, and I cannot get behind a team whose best player can't go and get a bucket when you need one, because that's what it takes to win championships. They really don't have any offensive players who can consistently go and score on their own. As great as Mabry has been here, if an opposing defense decides to key in on her, we've seen how that can go. On top of that, she's had a tough time at the free throw line late in close games this season. This is probably the thing I believe in the most in life. If you can't score, you can't win championships. It's that simple. It's hard enough to score in the playoffs when you have scorers. If you don't, I don't know the cap numbers, but they need to be blowing up Kelsey Mitchell's phone as soon as free agency starts. Connecticut's scoring issues have been what's held them back forever now. It's what stops them from competing with the elite teams. They're in that tier just below them, and they're doomed to remain there. Against the 3 teams I have ranked ahead of them, they are a combined 3-8. You're going to have to go against at least one of them to win it all. So yeah, again, great season, talented team. They're going to be a tough out, but I can't see them winning it all when it's all said and done. All right, these final 3 teams are the championship contenders as of right now, starting at number 3 with the defending back-to-back champion Las Vegas Aces, who have gone 27-13 to claim the 4 seed this year. Look, this season didn't look how any of us expected it to for them. Candace Parker retired. Chelsea Gray missed a ton of time and has only recently started looking like herself again. Jackie Young and Kelsey Plum have not played up to their standard at all. The offense as a whole has been a mess. They can look like the greatest team in the world for a quarter, and the very next, the ball stops moving, shots stop falling, they start racking up turnover after turnover. It's been their worst offensive season since 2019. They didn't really improve their roster from last season outside of convincing Tiffany Hayes to come out of retirement, to come off the bench. She's been awesome, but they have all these issues, so why do I believe in them? It all starts with A'ja Wilson. She's the best player in the league. It hadn't been particularly close this year, and that alone lifts them above the teams we've talked about before. This is the greatest individual season we've seen in league history. If you've got A'ja, you've got a chance. What more can you say about her? On top of that, they've been here before. They're battle-tested. The core of this group has been together for a while now as they've built this dynasty up. From being bad enough to get multiple number 1 picks, that counts for something. The moment isn't going to be too big for them. They know what to expect. Most importantly, they appear to have figured something out, starting with the August 25th game against Chicago, where A'ja hit the game winner at the buzzer. They've gone 10-2. They look like the WNBA champion Las Vegas Aces again. Plus, as bad as they've looked at times this season, they still went 27-13. In fact, they only have a losing record against 2 teams in the WNBA this season, the 2 teams ranked above them. So let's keep it moving. My number 2 team is the number 1 seed New York Liberty. They bounced back from last year's disappointment in the finals to go 32-8. Why do I think they can win it all this year? And what's stopping me from putting them at number 1? If I would have done these rankings like 2 weeks ago, they would have been. They've been putting belt to ass all season long. Sabrina Ionescu has played the one more this season, allowing her to use her playmaking skills more. She's also been more aggressive going to the hoop and carried them to start the year when Stewie was getting on track. Stewie's certainly on track now, which means she's a top 3 player on both sides of the ball. Her 3-point shooting percentage isn't what we usually see from her due to a slow start and then an absolutely awful July where she missed all 14 of her attempts, but she started hitting them again, so all facets of her game are rolling now. Jonquel Jones got off to a slow start last season, but she came in this year ready to roll and has been solid all year. Courtney Vandersloot's role is reduced, but she's been effective in it. Of course, Benaj Hamilton is Benaj Hamilton. And they've managed to put together some depth with Niara Sabally, Kayla Thornton, and Leonie Fibich, who could walk away as the 6th player of the year. As a team, they play both sides of the ball at a championship level. They could very well win it all. The only reason they aren't ranked number 1 is simply because the Lynx look better to me, especially as of late. Minnesota went 30-10 to claim the number 2 seed. They're led by Nafisa Collier, who, like Stewie and Asia, is one of the best two-way players in the game. And while I do believe the Liberty and the Aces have more talent, the Lynx have looked like the better and more cohesive team. The hardest offense to guard is one that moves a lot. That's what the Lynx do. They spread teams out and they move the ball and dare you to keep up with them. And they do that in the half court. They hit a lot of threes, and it feels like 75% of them are wide open. And this is why. They've had 11 players attempt a three-pointer this season. 10 of them have had at least 90% of their made threes assisted. That is ridiculous, and two-pointers aren't much different. The only players who have had less than 60% of their twos assisted are Courtney Williams and Natisha Heidemann, who are point guards who are both great off the dribble. As a team, 3 out of every 4 of their made shots are coming off an assist. Do you know how hard you have to work as a defense when the ball is moving like that? And again, they're getting open threes off this ball movement, and even their bigs can shoot it, which means your bigs are out on the perimeter guarding them, which opens up the paint for layups. It's a thing of beauty. They're just as active on defense too. They lead the W in defensive rating, and it's because they don't stop moving. They limit opposing offenses from moving the ball effectively, forcing them to try to attack off the dribble. This leads to a league-leading fewest assists allowed per game, which leads to a league-leading lowest field goal percentage against per game. This is the most complete team, and they've been the best in the league since the Olympic break, going 13-2, including losing the last game of the season when they rested their starters. They were 4-0 against the Liberty, Aces, and Sun in that period, and 8-0 against all playoff teams. They look like a championship team. The numbers back that up. And that's how you get to be number 1 in my playoff power rankings. All right, that will do it for this episode. Appreciate you watching, listening, rating, subscribing, reviewing, and sharing. Hope you have a great week, and I will catch you later.